and welcome to the Hybrid School Builders Podcast. I am your host, Rebecca Foley, and I am so glad you are joining me today. I am a fellow grassroots founder who is hoping to make your journey toward founding a sustainable hybrid school a little bit easier. If you are dreaming of starting a hybrid school, or perhaps you've already gotten started, you are in the right place. Join me as we dive into real stories, practical tips, and hard-won lessons that I have learned to help you launch and grow your program with confidence. Remember, building a hybrid school is not just about creating a business or creating jobs. It's not even about just serving the children who attend the program. It's literally about reshaping the landscape of education, and we can do that one community, one entrepreneur, and one program at a time. Hey guys, so I am attempting to round out season 1 of this podcast with about 30 episodes. And then I want to start the next season talking about more of the building phase, where in this season, I've been talking a lot about planning and a lot of what you need to know going into starting a new program. So one thing that I really wanted to hit on was this word strategy. Now, when I was first working in the planning phase and getting started, I don't think I ever said this word. And it's not really necessary to use it. I think it can get overused, and then it kind of loses its meaning to some extent. But that is why I wanted to talk a little bit about it, because strategy and being strategic is actually very important, except that you may be doing it without knowing you're doing it, or you may not be doing it. Okay. And that can leave gaps. All right. So let's just define the word. So if you just Google the word, you get definitions like roadmap, written roadmap, systematic process. So in any setting, what it really means is that you're looking ahead and you're looking behind and you're looking at where you're at, and you know where you're going. Clearly, you actually know where you're going. And you're making sure that you're getting there, and you're getting there as well as you can. So if you just think of it that way, let's say you're a restaurant owner and it's just you and you own a restaurant. A good, successful owner will be strategically planning, and they may be doing it without knowing they're doing it. They may be intuitively doing it by looking at, what other restaurants are out there? What kind of food do they serve? What are their prices like? They might start like that. They might be talking to people and hearing how everybody says there's no good Italian restaurant in town. Okay. And then they go visit a couple and they realize that, yeah, there aren't really any good Italian restaurants in town. Okay. And then they're kind of assessing themselves. Well, they know how to make good Italian food. Or they, come from an Italian family and they know what good Italian food is like and how to find a good Italian chef. And they have the business ability to actually open a restaurant, and they have the money to actually go find a location, get the equipment and all of that, right? So they're looking at everything that's going on in the environment. Maybe they're seeing the need, and maybe just one person is doing this, right? And then they're looking at themselves. Do they have the money? Do they have the time? Do they have the skill? And then they're looking forward. They're going to maybe say, well, we're going to open in this location and we're going to see how things go for 2 years. Because it's a little cheaper to own this location, and then we can expand if we need to, or maybe we'll just do a limited menu and have takeout pizza and a couple other things, and then a few sit-in things. They're thinking about how they can use their resources well. They're thinking about what's feasible, like what's actually doable. And then they're looking at well, now what do I have to do? I have to go look at properties. I have to go get a loan. I have to go buy equipment. I have to go find a manager. I have to go hire. I have to file my paperwork with the state or whatever. So they're gathering information, they're assessing the situation, and then they're doing the things in the proper priority. Okay, you don't go hire your manager or your chefs before you have your location. You have to do things in the right order, and you have to prioritize them well. And if you're not doing that, the chances are pretty good the business isn't going to be very successful. It either won't get off the ground, or it's going to run out of money, or whatever. Okay. Now, a strategic plan for a restaurant owner isn't going to guarantee that they're going to succeed, but it's going to help them fill the gaps and increase their chances of succeeding rather than just throwing things together or just having this idea of like, oh, I want to start an Italian restaurant, but there's 10 of them in town and 3 of them are really good. And there's no market for an Italian restaurant, right? Or maybe there is, but they don't have the money or the experience or whatever. If they're missing one of these pieces and they just jump in, they might really end up in trouble, all right? Now, it's really not any different for any kind of organization. So if you are an LLC running a little school, a hybrid school or micro school, and you are an LLC, you're essentially going to be doing strategy and doing it well, hopefully, by doing the exact same process. Is this needed in my community? What other things are out there? Who am I going to be competing with? How much can people pay for this? You're doing a bit of research on that. You're feeling it out. You're talking to some people. You're making sure that there is a need. Then you're like looking at yourself, like, do you have the time? Do you have the money? Right? Just like the restaurant owner. And then you're looking at the realities of what's coming up, what opportunities are out there, what are the prices of rent places? Like, do you have to rent from a little commercial place? Can you start on your own property? Can you rent from someone private? Do you need to rent from a church? If you do, what goes into that? Hint, hint, you might need to become a nonprofit. Okay, so strategic thinking is taking that assessment past and the current and looking forward into the future and making sure that you're focusing on the right priorities and it's all realistic and you know what your actual steps need to be and who's going to do them and when they need to get done to make sure that you get to your goal. Okay? That's what it means. Now, we take that one more step further, and strategic planning, that term, often comes up with nonprofits because it's something that a board is supposed to be doing for the nonprofit, okay? Like I said, when you're just a business owner, when you are a business owner, you are doing it, but nobody's telling you have to do it, okay? You should be just doing it intuitively, or maybe, you might sit down and do it depending on your personality and how you think and all of that. You might sit down and actually make a list of all of these things and write it out, and that certainly would be a good idea. But nobody's telling you, hey, LLC owner, you need to make sure that you have a strategic plan every year. Nobody's holding you accountable for that necessarily. Maybe business management textbooks are telling you that, right? But when you're a nonprofit, someone is telling you have to do that in the sense that a board is a rotating group of people, rotating as in there's different people serving on boards over the years. So they need to know what it is they're supposed to be doing. And because there's no owner of a nonprofit in the sense that nobody really owns the business, nobody can keep the money, nobody can keep the profit. No one person is supposed to be governing and running the business. The board is supposed to be doing that, okay? So the board needs to understand that it's their job, which is a bit more complex to have a group of people doing it than just one person doing it. It's their job to strategically plan in alignment with why the organization exists. And a nonprofit exists for its mission, okay? So the restaurant owner might exist because they want good Italian food in the neighborhood, but they also probably want to make some money, okay? And they can do that. That's fine. They're an LLC. A nonprofit is going to exist for the mission, okay? By definition, for the mission, all right? So what does that look like? It really doesn't look all that different than when the individual does it, except for the complexities of having a disinterested in the sense that succeeding at this is good for the organization, but it's not good for the individual necessarily, okay? Where an LLC owner, if they succeed and they make a big profit, it's their money, they get the reward. At nonprofit, there is no reward for the people who are actually strategically planning, so it has to be done for the good of the organization and for the good of the mission, right? So what does that actually look like? What it generally looks like is, and this can look a little different as far as who is actually making this happen, but the board, first off, needs to understand that they are supposed to be doing this because they are responsible for the sustainability and the stability of the organization. So if they just think about it that way, how does this organization going to sustain and how is it going to be stable in order to accomplish its mission and do it well? And for a hybrid school, the mission may be to deliver an affordable private education, maybe of a particular philosophy to elementary kids, something like that. So how do they do that and do that well? Doing it well also involves making sure that the staff, there's enough staff positions, making sure that the staff are paid well, which means approving a budget that is funded correctly, making sure the tuition is set at the right amount to fund the budget, or there's fundraising to fill in for any tuition that's not going to cover. Okay, but doing that not reactively and is an emergency. We got to fundraise to fill this because we don't have enough money, but to do it strategically so that they're thinking ahead. Is the tuition amount something that people are actually able to pay? Did we do some research on that? How are parents feeling? Okay, so a strategy, again, it's like a systematic process. It's a written roadmap. How do you get to your goal? What is the goal is generally something that you need to identify, okay? And the goal may be when you're first getting started or for a long time. The goal may be fairly general in the sense that you're trying to build a sustainable organization if you haven't gotten there yet. So it might be increasing enrollment so that you're at full enrollment, so your budget numbers are met. Eventually, later on, if you've hit that goal, you can do a new strategic plan in which maybe you expand your reach and you might have more classes or even a second location or something. But you don't do that. That would be a bad idea probably if you didn't first have a sustainable organization with what you're building right now. And it's feasible and it's realistic, okay? You run the numbers and you know that the market is ready for it and all of that, all right? So strategy is, how am I going to play out? What moves am I going to make to get to the goal? Now, a nonprofit board, first off, has to be educated on this. They need to know that it's something that they're supposed to be doing. They need to know what it is. They need to all agree on what the terminology means, okay? Then they need to have a plan to build a plan. They might have to start there as far as like, okay, so who's going to do this market research? Who's going to run these numbers? Who's going to see if the staff is adequate? Is it as far as like, do we have enough staffing positions? Are people doing okay? Are they burnt out? Are they wearing too many hats? Are they not getting paid enough? Do we maybe have someone sitting near board because they got paid to be an aide or administrative secretary, but then they're just like, don't actually have a lot to do, but they're getting paid? Like, who's going to go make sure that all of that is being done well? Okay. The board needs to be realistic about, if they have donors, they need to be, are the donors involved? Are they showing up? Are they coming to fundraising events? Are there relationships with donors? If there aren't, is that something that needs to happen? Who's going to do it? How realistic is it? Does anybody know these people yet? Are the contacts been made? There's a bunch of things that need to really be asked and answered honestly and realistically and feasibly in order to make sure that plan is being carried out, is going to be able to be carried out, okay? So to make the plan, after you know what the goal is, but like I said, the goal might be very general in the beginning, just having a sustainable, stable program, right? In the beginning, which is why you can have just a 1-year strategy if you're not there yet. And anytime anything else happens or is proposed, like, well, let's expand our programming or something like that, the board needs to know enough of what's going on to say, wait a minute, does that fit in with our strategy right now? Because our strategy isn't to expand programming for the sake of expanding programming, or even because there's people knocking down the doors. Right now, our plan is to build a sustainable program, okay? So maybe you're putting your resources in the wrong places. Maybe you're building out a middle school while you're turning away kindergartners. Okay, that can happen. where there's a huge demand in one area, but not in the other, but you want to serve the families you have, or maybe there's even a personal interest or somebody wants their own child to be served or something like that. And that stuff, surprisingly, can really end up driving what's happening in the organization when it shouldn't be. So plan to build plan, who's going to do it? And then what they're actually doing is what I just described was stakeholder input is what it's called, in the sense that who holds stake in the success of the organization? Well, the staff do, the parents do, the donors do. Okay. So someone has to go find out how those people are feeling about how things are going. If there's gaps with the parents, do they feel like is there some gaping hole somewhere where the parents are like, well, we thought we were, signing up for this, but we don't get this piece of it. Like, we're not getting this piece of it, or we're barely managing to pay this tuition. And, whatever it is, you're getting the input, and we might be able to get the input from the kids also. Okay, that's the stakeholder input. And this could be like having a couple surveys for the different groups, maybe doing a interview or a focus group sort of idea where you invite a few of the people in and you just talk to them about how's the environment around here? How's the culture? What do you really love about this place? And what's something that you think we could improve about this place, right? You're getting their input, and then you're, writing it down, and you're compiling it all. And then you're looking for anything that's a gap or something that needs to be developed. The board itself may say, we actually need improvement in our board. Like, we need to fix our board process, like how we train people or how we bring them on, or we're not actually looking at our bylaws every year, or we haven't looked at our mission statement in 3 years, right? That might be a high priority for the board, that they just need to be a little better about how the board meets, maybe how often they meet, how long their meetings are, maybe the leadership in the meeting. That might be something else that needs to be looked at. Okay. So the board members are also stakeholders. And then again, you have to have a plan for this plan. The board needs to be realistic about who's going to go find out all that information, and then who's going to actually take that information and compile it into a way that's readable and usable. And if there's something that's coming up, you're able to say, okay, this is something we need to look at. This is something we need to move up into the priority for our list, but you're not doing too many of them. Okay. You're being organized about it. You being who? Like I said, the board is responsible for strategic planning. They also have to be realistic about who's actually going to do the work, because this is a time-consuming process, okay? Depending on the size, it doesn't have to be that time-consuming. But so all that information from the different stakeholders is compiled by somebody, and you are looking at all these different areas. So you also have to make sure that you've identified those areas. I guess I'm backing up a little bit by saying it in this order, but what are the different areas? If, the curriculum, the facility, there's a lot of different subcategories that you can look at, and it can be helpful to when you're going to have a focus group interview, or you're going to put together a survey, that you sit down and you think about what are the different subcategories that we need to touch on, so that we dig out any issues that might need to be addressed, or we're proactive about what people maybe are looking for in the future, they're wishing that we could develop. So this is getting into a SWOT analysis of some kind, or, SWOT is a lot of strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. There's some other ways of doing that, but that's a very popular one. And that's kind of what you're doing as you do your stakeholder input. That's essentially what you're doing, is looking for some of those strengths and weaknesses and opportunities, right? And possibly threats. Among your stakeholders, not threats from your stakeholders, but looking for threats to your organization. Is there anything out there and it could be political. It could be, the state's about to pass that ESA law, or we're the only state who doesn't have an ESA law, or something like that. There could be opportunities, like they're going to pass one next year, and all of a sudden people are going to get tax credit or have money that they didn't have before. That's something to take into account, right? So there's opportunities, there's threats, possibly, there's strengths, there's weaknesses. And you're looking for into each of those areas, in each of those subcategories that you're dealing with: curriculum and staffing and culture and facilities and trainings and all of these different areas that make up a quality program. You're digging into that and looking for those strengths and weaknesses and opportunities, okay? So you do that in a systematic way, and then you have this massive information and feedback. And you're also, I think a good way to do it is to be gathering from the stakeholders who are outside of the board, but have the board also sit and do this exercise of like, what are our strengths as an organization? What are our weaknesses as an organization, right? These are just like, it makes them also do the exercise in a meeting, probably a specifically special meeting, not just a governance meeting, but it could be, where they're just doing this in a organized, systematic way, and they're doing the exercise themselves and thinking about these areas, okay? And it all gets written down, and then it gets reviewed, and you take just 3 or maybe up to 5. You pinpoint those areas and you say, okay, these are things we need to work on. These are things we need to improve or develop. Maybe you don't have a policy yet and you really need to have one. And it's causing, recurring issues. Maybe you haven't approved a code of conduct, or you need to clarify your statement of faith or something. Something like that you identify that kind of seems reactive, but it's something that needs to get taken care of because it's causing a recurring problem, right? Or maybe, all of your staff are complaining if they're not getting paid enough, like most of them. And you say, man, this is really like an issue, or we've had high turnover and people are coming back, but they say the culture is great, but they're just really, really underpaid. Or maybe it's vice versa or something like that. If that's like really standing out as an issue that needs to be addressed, the board needs to see that and then move that up the priority list. Okay, we have to do something about it. Okay, but now you've identified 3 to 5 priorities, but you can't stop at, we identified the priorities and now we need to do something about it. That's too ambiguous. Okay, now you need to figure out what you're going to do about it, who's going to do it, and when you're going to do it. Okay, so the ending of that strategic plan is taking all of those pieces, identifying those priorities, but then actually figuring out, like, how are we realistically going to get to this goal? Like, how are we going to accomplish this priority? And then who's going to do it? And when are they going to do it? All right. And you write it down and you make sure that the people who know they're responsible are aware of it. They have the resources for it. Something that can happen possibly is a board sits and looks at all of this and is like, oh, we need to do this. Go take care of it. And they stop there. And then the staff member might walk away, or the executive director, or, whatever. And they walk away and they're like, oh my gosh, I have no time to do that. I can't sit down and rework my whole budget, or it's going to take a year to develop those training materials or something. I don't have enough time to do it. You don't want that. Okay, that this needs to be a give and take and a conversation where you figure out, well, it might be a 3-year plan or a 2-year plan to create more robust training materials or build more community among your families or something like that. Let's say that was identified as one of the priorities. Maybe somebody's hours need to be increased and they need to get paid a little more so that they can plan field trips or seminars, or maybe the budget needs to get reworked because this thing you thought you were going to be able to do needs to get not done yet because you need to make sure that you're paying all your staff well. Like, you shouldn't be necessarily putting every penny away so that you can buy a building if all of your staff are still underpaid, right? That's not good priorities, even though you might have an issue with facilities. So facilities and paying staff might both be top priorities, but you got to figure out how to prioritize those 2 things, and then how to actually make those play out, okay? In a realistic way. Who's going to do it? How long is it actually going to take? How much time is it going to take? And then the last part of that, after that's all written down, is actually having accountability for accomplishing those things, okay? So that might be maybe a committee, or every board meeting, there's a check-in on where we're at with the deadlines. Is everyone doing okay? Do you need any more resources? Do you need more support? And the board should be holding it all accountable, which, again, everyone has to have had an honest conversation about how realistic and feasible it is in the first place. Otherwise, they go out and they're like, no, I couldn't get it done. It's just too much, right? And if they knew that from the beginning, they should have said that. And then you avoid a lot more frustration that way, okay? So, strategy, like I said, with a restaurant owner or our LLC hybrid school or our nonprofit board-run hybrid school, strategy itself is the same thing in all of those instances, okay? It's seeing where you're at, seeing all the parts, taking the time to really look at that, and then creating a plan for the future where you're taking the steps to work towards sustainability, better practices, financial stability. You're working toward these things, all going toward delivering your mission and delivering your mission well. And the board is responsible for that, or the business owner or whoever. They're doing it in a proactive way. Like I said in the last couple episodes, works best if there is healthy teamwork, healthy leadership, educated teams, educated leaders, good, healthy conflict. Everyone is listening. If there's concerns about any of it or there's gaps in any of it, people are speaking up, they're talking about it. There's healthy discussion, and there's leadership such that the plan happens, all in a healthy context. Thanks so much for listening today. Don't forget to subscribe and make sure you check out the resources I am developing at startahybridSchool.com. Send me an email anytime. I would love to hear from you. Until next time.